Welcome everyone. It's Angelo Robles, and welcome to At Family Office. And for my members of SFO Continuity, a special welcome. I've been looking forward to this interview really for a year. And finally, I've been able to get him on, and not a moment too soon, because we have some big announcements around all of this to share, more so as we go through the interview. So today, a real single family office is already running AI like this. Likely yours isn't. Today, if you're live, and if not in a recording, you meet the family office that is actually doing this. And that would be, by the way, my wonderful guest, Sam Clarvit, Managing Director, CCFO Investments, his family's private family office, advisor and teacher, two family offices on AI, strategy, and venture investments. Sam, this has been long in the making. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Angelo. I really appreciate it. Looking forward to talking with everyone today.
Oh, we have a lot to talk about. And on that note, let's get right to it. Sam, most people in the audience, family offices, finance, entrepreneurs, whatever it might be, they think they're kind of keeping up with AI. From where you sit, what's the most common thing a family office gets dangerously wrong about how far behind they may actually be?
Well, I would say the dangerous thing isn't that they're far behind, but it's that they feel like they're current, right? They feel they're current because they're benchmarking across the wrong groups. They're a sophisticated family office, right? By definition, they're great at manager selection, tax structuring, deal access, governance. And we know that we're really good at those things, right? That's why we've been successful. But to say that you're ahead of your peers or behind your peers or caught up to your peers, it's not really a good benchmark, right? Really, the idea is more that you need to start learning these gaps and knowledge now, like your knowledge gaps now, because knowing it now allows you to compound that knowledge. Right. We're going to talk quite a bit about that today, because that's exactly what AI is great at helping you do. But the advantage isn't coming from the software, right? It's coming from accumulating judgment about how to use it and how to actually apply your knowledge to it so that it actually improves your stack and your ability to do things.
I'm only chuckling as my audience who's seen me do, I don't know, maybe several about AI integration for family offices. Mindset and compounding are probably the two most common words that I use. And compounding, starting now, working hard, accumulating your knowledge, and how it grows just like an investment. I promise, audience, that was not synced up. So now you have someone else other than me that mentions the word compounding and how valuable it actually is. Now, without naming names, what's a result you've seen AI produce in a family office, whether it's yours or another, that most people, like, they still think that's years ahead, and it's here right now?
Yeah. So Angela, there's countless, right? There really are. I think the one I've seen the most is really the ability to, first of all, have an AI that learns how you like to operate and not start from a fresh slate every single time you start a chat, so that it actually knows you, understands how you like to invest, understands the way that you do things and the tasks that you follow to do them, and how you actually like the output received. Right? The part about all of these tools is they're fully customizable and they're designed around how you would like to use it. So I think the one biggest thing that I see, and I personally do this myself, is I can chew through an entire data room in about an hour and have full cited, detailed research that is, if not the same level, if not better than outside providers that we would have hired to do the same level of research.
Sam, I'm going partially back to my first question. How I started it was, Sam, most people in the audience believe they're keeping up with AI. This is kind of that follow-up to that. They believe that putting in a sentence into ChatGPT, they open a tab, they put in a sentence, AKA a prompt, and like that counts with them keeping up on the latest model of an AI. Help them, actually be honest with themselves. What's the real difference between what I would call having access to AI and really running an operation on it?
Yeah, so having ChatGPT open in a tab is more of like a consumer relationship, right? Like you go to it occasionally when you remember to, and with whatever you happen to paste in, right? You kind of have a back and forth chat, but it doesn't really remember much about what you've talked about it, except the last 5 minutes of chat you've had. It's not connected to any of your data. There's nobody accountable for anything that it's producing. So that's having AI, right? That's like having a relationship with a calculator, right? Like you can have AI and you can use AI, but it's not doing anything for you, right? Running your operation on it, though, is completely different, right? It's actually considered more load bearing. It's wired into your holdings, your documents, your entities, how you actually continuously run. And it's systematized, right? Like you actually build and use it instead of some of the tools you've been using before as a replacement for some of the, or in addition to some of those tools you've had before. But more importantly, it's supervising itself, right? You should be, as you build it, putting in those guardrails so that it's actually operating the way you would expect it to. But the idea really here is that if you were to switch off your AI tomorrow, would anything actually stop working? And if the answer is no, then you have AI in a tab, right? And if you're really running your operations, then you would notice something was actually missing if AI was gone, right? So that's the biggest difference. That's I think, what we're going to see changing over the next few years, and what I'm hoping that we can teach.
Sam, someone watching this, I don't know, young, old, entrepreneur, family office, finance, legal, accounting, whatever, and they're not too technical. Imagine me 2 years ago. At that time, 58 years old, not that technical. Where do you tell them to begin? The old adage is you have an elephant in front of you to eat. That sounds gross, but we could picture the analogy. The best way to start is one bite at a time. How would you recommend they begin to dip their toe and then compound that knowledge when they're using AI?
All great questions, Angelo. And not to shamelessly plug, but I will shamelessly plug for a second. One of the best ways they can get started is come take our masterclass, because we are going to dive deep. There you go. We are going to be diving deep into how to actually get started and how to actually build some of these things yourself for your own purposes. And I'm going to show you how I do these things and ways that things that I've learned, ways that I've done it, so that you can apply the same skills and knowledge to how you do things. We all operate very differently. I'm not saying anything that anybody doesn't already know, and I'm not going to say the old family office adage that everybody else already knows. But that's a critical component to this, right? Is I can teach you the general knowledge, but you ultimately need to figure out how it applies to your family office. So I think really, how do you get started? We need to start using some of these tools today. Understand their limitations, understanding what you can do, what you can't do, and also understand that this is all built using plain English, right? You can talk to this chat to have you build anything you could possibly imagine just by asking in a language you do already know how to speak, right? The one thing that's been separating coders and developers over the last however many decades of doing it is they know the languages. We don't, but we all know how to speak English. Most of us know how to speak English, and we can use that to actually inform AI, understand and deduce, and then give us the results we're ultimately looking for and iterate, right? Ultimately, you're going to iterate with everything, and you should be with AI tools. There's nothing that you're going to build today that is going to look exactly the same at the end of the year.
And audience, we'll get a little more into it, a little deeper into the podcast, but Sam did let the cat a little bit out of the bag. If you're watching me more than once, you know that I kind of do talk about June 23rd and June 24th, my AI Family Office Masterclass, because I believe it's incredibly special. Not just because I built it and I'm a part of it, it's because I have incredible, broadly, let's go with the word faculty instructors that are simply real entrepreneurs, real family offices. Oh, and by the way, you're hearing one of them right now. Sam Clarvit is an incredible. He's not good. He's not very good. He's a great instructor, a real principal in a family office with an AI background who's actively doing real stuff in the family office. And how he teaches it is, I don't care if you're 70 years old and starting from ground zero, you will begin to catch on. It does make a difference. A little more on that coming up later. Building upon that question, what's the first thing that maybe every investor, family office should do, maybe the first 30 days, other than signing up at maybe more of a premium plan to Anthropic or OpenAI, before they begin spending real dollars and using, we'll get to things like tokens, what's a good first step the first 30 days?
Well, first, you got to start using these tools and understanding their limits, right? You need to understand how each of them act and how they respond, because they're all very different. They all have different strengths and different weaknesses. And so the analogy I like to give is that you go to Home Depot and there's how many power tools on the wall. And a lot of them do the same thing, but people typically go to the tools they trust and they respect and the ones that they've used before. And that's ultimately what I'm asking you to do with AI. There's a lot of tools that can do a lot of very similar things, if not better than some, right? But you need to find which tool is the right tool to use for the right task you're trying to solve. And then how do you start combining all of those together so that you ultimately build something more of like a system, something more of a workflow engine, something more that you have control over. And while AI is non-deterministic, meaning that you and I will never get the same output twice, exactly, because of that, if you want to add a little bit of determinism to a system, that you can do that, but you've got to chain these tools together to find the proper way to do so, right? And to build that knowledge. And again, it definitely comes back to compounding, right? I can take an existing output from one AI model and feed it to another and get a different result and a comparative result. I could do adversarial review. Mm-hmm. I could do thought partner process. Like I can say, analyze a deal like Charlie Munger would analyze the deal. How would he have thought about this process? And then explain it to me in the same methods. Or here's a great one, and this is one that I actually been using more lately with my own diligence work, is do a pre-mortem. What does that mean? Well, assume the company is gone in 5 years or 10 years or 30 years. What happened and why? And start to think about those issues in advance so that you can start preparing for those in advance. It's a different way of analyzing a deal and a way that it's hard for people to think about that way, right? But AI doesn't have the same thought process. It is absolutely the smartest intern that you need to guide in every single way.
And Sam, now in our remaining 49 minutes is not going to be the time to do a deep dive into granular, quote unquote, prompt engineering. But you did mention some terms that I'm going to know behind the scenes. Oh, Sam's talking about temperature. And these are all things, by the way, in both my books for my members only and the masterclass for members only that you'll learn. I recommend initially through the books to get a grounding, to be experimental, and then jump into the masterclass and have a little bit of a foundation that you could ask the questions and the interactivity with the instructors and your peers. Nonetheless, we'll spend just a little bit of time, and I hinted at it with, you put in a one-sentence prompt and expect an Einstein-like answer. There is an art and science to it, but it's debatably getting more science. Therefore, what's the best way for the AIs, whether it's Anthropic, OpenAI, Gemini, etc., to help create the prompt to get the result that you want, aka meta prompting?
So Angela, there's a lot of ways of doing that, right? And I think really we've gotten to the point in 2026, especially that last year we had to spend more time on prompting and understanding how to best prompt these systems. But these models have also gotten significantly better in the last few months, even that how I prompt is less and less required for specificity, right? I don't need to be as granular to get the same amazing response I'm expecting. I could put in a relatively stupider prompt and still get an amazing answer as long as it has enough context, right? As long as it has enough understanding about the problem I'm asking it to help me solve or address, right? And so really in 2026, it's not about how do I prompt better, of course, that's an important factor, right? But what we'll teach you is also how can you get AI to prompt itself? And we'll discuss that. And that's also, I think, Angela, what you're getting to, right, is how do we get that meta prompt to help us build the best prompt? We use AI to help us do that, right? I think I know what the best prompt could be. But when I send it into AI, all of a sudden I get a response that I wasn't expecting. But that's what the AI interpreted. So why am I not asking AI earlier what it thinks of what I'm trying to say and help me rebuild my prompt so that I'm not spending the entire time iterating and iterating and iterating until I finally get the answer. I actually want to iterate my prompt first. And there's another real reason why that's beneficial. One thing we haven't covered, and we're going to definitely make sure we go into detail because this is really the primary issue of 2026, is context engineering. The idea of how do you give the AI enough knowledge within the finite window it has so that it can help you adjust and answer the questions you're trying to answer without going out of its limit and then suddenly stopping or not knowing what it has access to anymore, which is a serious concern. So really what we're talking about this year will be context engineering and how do we do that. So I will definitely be spending more time this year on how do we do that. That said, prompting is still very important, and the easiest way to do it is say to AI, hey, don't answer this prompt, just give me a new prompt. Here's my prompt that I have to start, reevaluate it. This is what I'm thinking. Give me the new prompt instead. Take that new prompt once you've iterated the new prompt and start that in a brand new chat. And that chat, in a new chat, that's the context window reason. You want to make sure that when you finally have your amazing chat, you are starting over in a new chat. Why? Because that chat that you've just been having that prompt discussion about, the entire purpose of that chat, according to its context, is, oh, we're optimizing prompts here. We're fixing prompts. We're not taking action on prompts. We're building prompts. So you need to take your prompt and go to a new chat where it doesn't have that knowledge, and it's not assuming every response needs to be a new prompt. Does that make sense?
Of course. And these are all things that we'll do deep dive and immersively within the masterclass. So there's multiple frontier models, obviously Anthropic, OpenAI. I mentioned Gemini. The one I forgot I left out was Grok. And Perplexity's kind of unique, but we'll broadly throw them in. You mentioned context engineering. I mentioned things like temperature. There's lots of nuances there that, again, in my books and the masterclass, we'll do a much deeper dive. You're not going to get the best output you want if you don't know what you're doing here. And likely these systems are going to be better at prompting if you know how to set it up than you. The one thing that we didn't talk about that maybe we'll spend a minute or two here, a lot of the more newbies are going to get frustrated. Like, I don't know, Angelo, I have a continuous chat going. I have a continuous project, and that's a big no-no. Talk about starting new projects and maybe not to get too deep in the weeds here, so you don't have to explain yourself and who you are and your outputs that you kind of want directionally, that Claude Markdown files, MD files, a little bit about the structure of setting up the engine to help get the outputs that are going to be maximized to what you want.
Sure. So you covered quite a bit in there, Angela. So let's break down a couple of things into that. So first, we'll talk about the Markdown files, because you're right, that's critically important when you're trying to build continuously running tasks, especially, right? When we're talking about Claude MD files or Agent MD files, which is the equivalent for ChatGPT's Codex, or Anti-Gravity, which is Gemini's new tool that they're replacing Gemini CLI with, they all rely on these Markdown files. Even Claude Desktop or ChatGPT Desktop or any of these tools, when you point your AI to look at a folder and take actions, which is what Cowork can help you do and what ChatGPT's Codex can help you do on the Mac and on the Windows, when you're doing that, there's a lot involved behind the scenes that you wanted to start remembering. And when you come into a folder and you want it to remember how all of this folder works and all the actions you take in that folder, you put that in a Claude or an Agents MD file. And that way, every single time you point Claude or Codex at that folder to take actions in it, it actually reads those as instructions on what actions it can take in that folder. And it's not to say that you can't have multiple tools going on in the same folder at the same time. You absolutely can. And you can have multiple tasks going on in the same folder as many times as you want. Keep in mind, one thing we talked about was tokens, highlighted tokens briefly. We're going to go into more detail on what those really mean in the class and how they get utilized and why they're so important and how it all feeds into the context window and the broader picture. But ultimately, when we're talking about, Angela, because you mentioned a couple things, let's talk about projects as well. There's nothing wrong with large projects in these systems. There is something wrong with large chats, right? Because what will start to happen is eventually it will run out of the context. And Claude will do this. Now ChatGPT is doing the same thing. It will do what's called compaction. which means that it will actually take the entire chat and it will run another model against it to produce a summary. But you have no control over what that summary contains. And so it may be missing critical data as it tries to continue. Because what it's going to do is it's going to then take that summary and start your chat over, starting with the summary. And that could miss quite a bit of information. So if you're getting to the point of compaction, stop. Maybe you want to start a new chat and continue. Remember, if you have those markdown files, you just give it the markdown file. It's a set of instructions. Markdown files can essentially be a prompt in a file. And I know markdown sounds like it's something really, really hard to understand. Basically, to simplify it all the way down, it is a text file. You can click on it and fully read absolutely every single thing that's listed in there. The only benefit that markdown gives to an AI agent, especially for example, would be the fact that it can emphasize points like bolding certain sentences or words, italicizing, or adding columns or tables or what have you, basically formatting plain text so that you can add emphasis, or the AI can add emphasis on things that it needs to remember or control, just like a human would, right? If I send you an email that says, do not the following action, and I put not in bold and capital letters, you're going to react and you're going to say, okay, I should not take this action. And you're doing the exact same thing with an AI. You're giving it a full set of instructions, all in English. And when we go through all this, as you're building your own systems, that's the important thing to remember, is the guardrails you start to put in place to keep the AI on the line that you're trying to have it follow. All of that's done in English. You are just asking in writing, this is what I want you to do. Don't do the following X, do the following Y instead. The more that you've given this information, the better the AI will know. Remember, if you give it absolutely no context on how your family office operates, and you're trying to give it a task to say, go due diligence a company and come back to me and tell me if I should invest in it. If it doesn't know anything about how you like to invest, how is it going to give you a good answer, right? It will say everything's a good deal because it has nothing to compare it to. So you need to give it more information to take action on. That's the key. Does that answer the question, Angela?
Yes. And again, I'm trying to be careful not to get overly deep in the weeds. We have a lot of things to cover, but there are people that are going to be most familiar with Anthropic being an incredible suite, probably the most comprehensive broadly in services. And we'll maybe get to things that you build inside the family offices with Claude Code. But I think relative to markdown files and what you're describing, memory, institutional memory, projects, context window, temperature, I promise, audience, it's not even quite as complicated as I probably just made it sound. But there is something called Claude Skills that relates to what we spoke about. Tie that together, please.
So actually, Angelo, it's not even Claude Skills anymore. They've open sourced it. They've licensed it out to the Linux organization so that it's actually open source for any of the model providers to use. And as a matter of fact, they all do. They just don't all do it in their desktop-facing consumer applications.
Right.
So that's why it may come across like they don't, but in fact, they actually do. Google actually just released a part of their front-facing, user-facing features is their agent skills feature, which it's slightly different than the typical spec, but it functions very similarly. You define it with a skill name, you give the skill description, and then you give it the body of the message as to like, here's what these steps are. So let's boil it down. What is a skill? A skill is literally a set of instructions that the model will follow. When tasks that you do in your day-to-day, if you were to atomically break down each individual step you take, like first I go to this website, then I click this link, then I go to this. If you were to atomically break down each individual step of your task and feed it back to AI, it will follow it just like a recipe. And so that's exactly what these skill files are. Think of it like Neo in the Matrix. Suddenly he got jacked in and was uploaded with, now he knows Kung Fu, right? Just because got it uploaded into his brain. That is exactly what we're doing with AI skills, right? Agent skills are the exact same idea. What is a standard level of operating procedures for the tasks that we're about to be taking? And the best part about skills is they can contain multiple things. They don't have to just contain a text file. They can contain reference files that it can reference when needed. It can contain workflows, which we're going to cover that in a little minute, I'm sure.
We are.
It covers so many different aspects. So skills can be a great benefit, like a huge benefit, especially coming back to compounding when you chain them together. So if I have one skill that does X and then the next skill takes the next set of tasks, I can have many skills in a row. And currently for some, like, for example, for my diligence workflow, I have over 60 skills and they're all doing very different aspects, and they'll sometimes chain together. Sometimes they won't. It depends on the need of the item.
And Sam, we're kind of going to go soon from chat to actually AI doing things, though we hinted at it certainly much earlier. But I want to go back to the point that many of you, I get it, you maybe are the free or $20 a month plan, likely OpenAI. You've gotten a little better than maybe this one sentence as a quote unquote prompt. And you think that you're a little disappointed in the output. Well, hopefully now in the last 10, 15 minutes, you kind of learned why. And I'm not saying this is super complicated. It's not. But you do have to understand the context of how to properly engineer the right prompt, understand the nuances of the various systems where they may have an edge or advantage. You have to understand what I broadly call skills, definitely markdown files, because you're just not going to get the output, even in the chat, nowhere near what you both want and need if you don't know how to do this. And you have no excuse. You have to learn it. The audience, I think, would benefit, Sam. I mentioned the core 4 models. We'll likely get to some open weight models a little bit later, but very briefly when we talk about sovereign. But among the open weight models, if you don't mind, share how your experience with ChatGPT 5.5, with the new from 1 week ago, Opus 4.8, are some better at some things than others? And do you make them compete for an answer?
First of all, absolutely, absolutely, and absolutely, right? So as I mentioned earlier, these models are very much like the Home Depot wall of tools, right? They all have their different uses and functions and features and benefits. And the benefit in trying all of these tools together is you do start to learn what the strengths and weaknesses are of each, right? So for example, GPT 5.5 is a little colder, right? It doesn't sound as warm and human, and it doesn't give you the nice fuzzies that you feel when you have a chat with Claude, which can act and reply in what feels like more of a human-like manner. And it's because of how they were built and how they were trained and how they were, taught to respond. And because of that, that might actually cause you to use them for different purposes, right? So Claude is actually phenomenal for creative writing because of that human aspect, whereas ChatGPT may not be the first thing you go to for that. But it may be really good at structure and organizing and saying, wait a second, I might not know how to do prose correctly, but it may know the flow of a speech would sound better like this. So why wouldn't I use the two of those together? Have one write the flow and have one write the copy, right? The idea is absolutely I should use the power and combinations of everything I can. Why wouldn't I? Some tools have the best advantages. For example, Perplexity. We mentioned that one earlier. It's not one of your big models, and it's not huge. But they do have their own model. It's not as big as some of the other, but the best part is they actually provide all of the other providers' models as well. But it's the best at getting live data. If you want live financial data, Perplexity is the only place you can get that. If you want live Google searches and you want YouTube results and you want to feed it a video and get responses back, well, you need Gemini for that. It's the only one that can do some of those things.
100%.
If you want to access Twitter data, live Twitter data, well, Grok is the only one that can do that, for example, right? It's not to say that you can't get the combinations and the powers of multiple tools into one. You can. Skills is a great way of doing that, right? You can teach a current Claude model on how to produce a video using a skill. But remember, it's not going to be the one making the video. It can't do that. It doesn't have that capability. So again, it does come back, Angelo, as you were mentioning, and as we were mentioning earlier, is like, you need to find the right tool for the right problems. And sometimes it's different tools for different problems, but they need to be done together. And we'll talk about how you can hand them off, how you can have that gladiator method that we've spoken about in the past of having AI models compete or battle each other and get the best result. Now, one thing I will tell you that I have found, and this is common and it's been proven, that a model provider or a model typically prefers its results over that of another's. So if I were to give 3 copies to say Claude, ChatGPT, and Gemini, they would each prefer their own over another. Not always, but most of the time. So how do you negate some of that? Well, you prompt it that way, right? Have adversarial review, but do it blindly. Make sure no one knows what output belongs to which. That was a simple prompt change, and now immediately it doesn't have the same effect, right? So really what it comes down to is how do we ask the right questions? How do we build the right tools in place? And all of this comes down to something we're definitely going to be spending a lot of time on in the masterclass, which is something called harnesses, which is huge in the AI, but it's been around in software development for many, many years. But the idea behind a harness is it's everything that wraps around the model to give it the extra functionality and tooling to allow you to complete those tasks, to allow an agent to run for 24 hours or longer to complete tasks. That's what's called the harness. And it's giving it gives the model access to the skills. It gives the model access to MCP, or what you see as connectors when using Claude or Gemini or ChatGPT, right? They have the ability to connect your live data. All of that is because of the harness around the model. The regular model itself is what you would see in a chat. It doesn't have any extra abilities, right? But once you start adding them on, that's the harness giving the model access to tools that it didn't have before and abilities it didn't have before. And now that's what's so amazing in this year, is we can now actually customize and build our own harnesses, which does tie in very well into workflows, Angelo. So I hope I didn't tee you up too much. But you know.
Yes, and right before we get into dynamic workflows, as they, technically Claude, it came out a week ago, called it, and really built upon what they did with the finance agents, where Dario on stage with Jamie Dimon about a month before, and about a month before that was Claude managed agents, all leading into this. Right before you answer that, and these incredible, powerful tools that take you from chat to doing things, even within your browser in Complexity Computer or Gemini and other platforms, the last 3 months have been incredible. But Sam, right before we get to that, I know some of you in finance and family offices, a principal or an executive, like, whoa, this is a lot coming at me. I get it. I promise you, if I could learn it, you could learn it. I break it down in the books. Nothing beats a masterclass, as you could tell. Sam is a masterful instructor. And no, this is not a masterclass where Sam talks for an hour, sits there and moves on. He's there multiple days, a multi-hour instructor, faculty leader, interaction with the other faculty members, and constant questions and interactions with many of you. Many of the people that Sam met last year, they've kept in touch with him. And that level of camaraderie and interaction and learning and sharing is what makes it valuable. You could be starting from ground zero, I promise you. And the books, the masterclass, heading into July 4th, which is what, like a month away, you could literally be in the top 1% comparative to other family offices. That's how intense and valuable the next 30 days could be for you. Imagine what you could do and build this summer, and then heading through the summer into Labor Day and beyond here in the US and around the world in September. Like, I want you to have job security. And if all you do is look at a computer screen and focus on legal, accounting, workflows, and finance, I'm telling you, the world is changing. You know many of the thought leaders that are out there quasi-honestly talking about this. It's changing rapidly. Look at what Ken Griffin said about PhD hires. Look at what Jamie Dimon building a workflow in 20 minutes over a weekend with Anthropic. Like, things are changing rapidly. And you having a sense of arrogance, ego, or letting any of that get in the way is not going to be good for you. It's not going to be good for the family office, your entity, the entrepreneurship, whatever it might be. Okay, I'm going to get off my soapbox there a little bit, Sam. We left off a little bit going from chat to doing things, and we teased out dynamic workflows. If you could talk a little bit about that.
Sure. And by the way, not to get entirely off of your soapbox just yet, I will also say we're covering the concepts, right? That is really the understanding here, that you can then apply this knowledge as the AI models and as the AI world develops and adds new features and new tooling. You at least now understand the terminology, how all of these things connect and work together, so that you can ultimately apply these new tools without even needing to come to the next masterclass. That said, we still want you to. Okay, so Angelo, what are workflows and what makes them so interesting? So I just mentioned briefly what harnesses are, really, and allowing everything around a model to actually function the way that you would like. Now, what dynamic workflows are and what makes them so amazing right now is it actually allows you to spin up hundreds or even up to 1,000 specialized sub-agents. Now, what does that mean? When you're talking to your Claude Cowork, for example, or Codex, the desktop app, you're talking to the LLM agent. They call it the agent. It's the one doing the work alongside you. So you ask it, hey, can you build me this? And it's the one building that, right? It's answering the question. They have the ability to create what's called a sub-agent, which is a dedicated, fresh context window. That is the key feature of a sub-agent, is that it operates with a fresh, clean context window. And it can completely take a task, summarize the work that it completed, and report the summary of its work up to the main agent. So this allows you to do a lot of things at once, or the agent can spin out sub-agents at once for dedicated tasks. Now, it can do that by default now without a dynamic workflow. What makes dynamic workflows so amazing is that it actually allows it to figure out up to 100 or 1,000 sub-agents all at once. Mm-hmm. And they're allowed to actually cover dedicated aspects. So let's say, for example, let's go back to my diligence example. If I'm diligencing a company, I can give it the entire data room and I can predefine my workflow where I can just say, build a workflow based on the following details, and it will analyze and determine on its own. It will actually build in real time its own harness specifically to diligence that deal by figuring out what kind of workflow type it needs. Now, there's actually 6 different workflow variation styles that they support. And it can actually be any combination of those 6 as well, which makes it a larger combination, right? Makes it almost nearly infinite. But basically what's going to happen is the agent can do any of these 6 options, whether that's adversarial review, where it goes and sends out multiple sub-agents to analyze the deal and then come back with a set of series of judge sub-agents that go and attack adversarially every single one of those claims. And then there's a synthesize sub-agent that will come in at the very end and read all of the reports and synthesize everything for me in one go. Now, what does this really benefit me for? Well, before, when I was doing that workflow or my diligence steps, it might have taken me 2 hours to produce that report. But now it might take me 20 minutes. Because instead of having to send out one sub-agent after another or to figure out, okay, I need a few here, a few there. Okay, what is this? It's dynamically loading them on its own. And what's amazing about them too is it can even say, oh, because of the research I'm currently doing, I actually need more sub-agents. Let me spin those out and for this purpose. Now, Angela, we talked about earlier, how do we prompt and all that? And ultimately, how do we get the AI to prompt itself? This is that great example. When when sub-agents get spun out, the agent is prompting those sub-agents on its own with the prompt it needs to take the actions that you're ultimately trying to achieve. But you're not writing that prompt. The agent built into to Claude Code or Cowork or Gemini or Codex, it's taking that action. That's the next amazing unlock. And the best part about workflows, and here's really why I think they're going to be significant as the rest of this year continues, is that you can save these workflows and you can reuse them. So I can actually take a workflow that I know works really, really well and save it and then put it into a skill. What does that mean? I ultimately have, when I save a workflow, it's a JavaScript file. Now, I know the audience isn't necessarily that technical, but it's a single file of code with a set of instructions for it to follow. I can save that single file filled with code into my skills folder with the rest of my skills. And by default, when, for example, Cowork, which doesn't actually support dynamic workflows yet, but when Claude Code does it, it will read the workflow and it will kick that workflow back off, but it will do it based on the data that it's seeing now, hence the dynamic aspects of it, right? We'll get a chance to go really deep on what those 6 styles of workflows really are and how you can prompt for a specific style, why you may want one style over another. What does that really mean? There's a lot of aspects for this we could touch, but again, Angelo, as you mentioned, it really got released last week. So there's still a lot of unknowns. There's still a lot of things that will happen over the next few months, over the next few years as these features continue to develop. But we had skills. Let's just put this in perspective. Agent skills, the function, the feature, came out in around October of last year. And the reason why, for example, OpenClaw, which I know we're going to talk about in a few minutes too, the reason why OpenClaw was so big and popular over the last few months was actually because of skills. When you actually go and prompt OpenClaw to take an action, it's running on a harness underneath it that is not very fully defined. It is completely customizable. That's what made OpenClaw so amazing, was I can say, I want you to be able to do this every day, and this is how I like it, and it will build the harness live, just like Dynamic Workflows was doing. It will build the harness live to continuously take those actions for you. That's what makes OpenClaw so amazing, but it was using skills to continuously do that. Oh, you want to be able to read Twitter data? Here's a skill to be able to do that. Now, what's important to remember for something like OpenClaw is that it's not its own model. It's OpenClaw specifically is a harness. You actually use any model with OpenClaw. You can use the open weight models, which we were just talking a little bit about, and we'll go a little bit deeper on if you would like. Or you can use any of the frontier models like Claude, but you'll pay, ChatGPT or Gemini. You can use any of them. You really can, to be the underlying model beneath everything.
Yes, and maybe that's actually a good transition. And by the way, audience, ask away. It looks like it may be DL-1. Those are not questions that are dedicated to AI, but if we have time at the end, I will give you a minute, a little bit of context to it. And you could always email me or DM, and I could have a little chat via that way. So I do occasionally try to be a nice guy and try to help. Not as often as I should, but I occasionally get in a good mood, audience.
It looks like most of the answers to that question, though, Angelo, it looks like most of them are get a good lawyer.
Yeah, like get a good family office and trust lawyer. And I do emphasize, depending on, I don't know what your net worth and your situation is, there are nuances in the industry and state, what country you're in. And I've been in this community a long time. I don't think there's a lot of really good family office attorneys, but that's just me. And sadly, I'm not one of them, or maybe not so sadly. Sam, where we're going to go now is we're talking about from chat to doing things, but we're sticking a little bit, or have been, to the frontier models, mainly Anthropic and a little bit of OpenAI. And we didn't really get into Perplexity Computer, browser functions, Comet, how that morphed. And again, we got to save some things with depth for the masterclass, but you did bring up OpenClaw. So these will be my comments and then jump right into. When you use the frontier models like Anthropic, my words, I'm not putting words into Sam's mouth. They're incredible if you know what you're doing. You don't own them, you rent them. Theoretically, especially if you don't know what you're doing, you might be bleeding some IP. Even if you think, oh, well, I'm using them through AWS and Bedrock and I got them contained. Bravo, you're doing some things better than most people. Oh, but I have trading turned off. Again, you're doing some things better than most people, but it is a platform that you don't own. There may be vendor lock-in. And if you believe in sovereignty, and I'm an extreme believer in privacy and control, then that may not get it done for you. That's going to lead you down the road of what hardware do I own where I don't need to touch the cloud because I'm downloading AI models that are not quite as powerful, but maybe I don't need them to be. Now, my bigger comment on what you said about OpenClaw, where I do have some experience, yes, but I think it needs a little bit of context. And I think if you watch Alex Finn and others, they'll also tell you, and by the way, Hermes has given OpenClaw a battle of all battles, and that's great. So these are open harnesses, a word that I'll use, that correct, you got to kind of strap in the AI. Most people are going to recommend that for high level thinking, AKA a level of orchestration, that you use the frontier models, but you want to be mindful of cost. Right now, I don't exactly know why, and neither do many others. It appears like Anthropic's suite, even though they fight OpenClaw, something about their orchestration just works a little better at the moment than 5.5, but it's gotten closer. But for execution, you can absolutely and probably should, unless you want to spend thousands and thousands of dollars a month, probably use open weight models that you have to learn how to use Hugging Face Solana, how to download, how to have the right hardware, all things. And that's a little bit my wheelhouse that we'll talk more about at the masterclass. But if you want to give a comment, Sam, for those that may not want to be locked into Claude or OpenAI, may want to have more sovereignty, where Hermes, OpenClaw, and if you're a family office that has an AI engineer on board, maybe using Pi, you could kind of build your own system completely from scratch.
So thank you so much for mentioning Pi, by the way, as well, Angela, because I was mentioning the harness underneath OpenClaw is actually Pi. That is what powers, that's what makes it work. You asked quite a bit of questions in there again too, Angela, so I'm going to try to address it.
I got that bad habit.
It's a good thing. It's a good thing. When it comes to agentic development, that's what we're talking about with regards to these tools, is agentic AI, or like that AI assistant that you always dreamed Siri would have always supposed to have been, right? Your real personal assistant. That was the hype cycle, right? That's what made it such a big deal was, I finally have the assistant that I can just say, hey, go put a meeting on my calendar and it's done. Like I don't have to think about it. I just fire off the tasks and I come back and it's complete. But what's amazing for all the people who've been using Claude Code or Codex or a lot of these tools for the last few months, if not at least a year, because Claude Code came out in February of last year. It's only been slightly over a year, and it's already valued the product over $2 billion. That's how big of a jump it's been, right? The users who've been using Claude Code for the whole year were like, what's so exciting about OpenClaw? It does everything I already know how to do now. But what made it super exciting for most people was I can access it from text messaging it on my phone.
Yeah, it's very cool.
Right? That's what made it such a big deal. But it's also what makes it very scary from a security perspective is you don't have the visibility as to what's really going on behind the scenes. And I know this story is already old, but I'm going to bring it up briefly because it is important as you think about the security of these tools, that one of Meta AI's lead security engineers for AI had almost all of her emails deleted by OpenClaw because she didn't see that, by the way, the reason why it happened was it blew the context window, that her prompt and her instructions were too big. The context couldn't hold it anymore. So it just started massively deleting everything. And she couldn't get to it in time before she could shut it off. It was already all deleted permanently. So that's a guardrail problem. You need to make sure you have the right guardrails in place to make sure it can't do something like that.
Do you like things like Paperclip for governance?
Paperclip's actually probably scarier, if you want to be honest, because it's really the way that Paperclip works, for those in the audience who aren't familiar, is it's supposed to be like OpenClaw, but on scale, right? The idea is I give a company of AI agents a task as the board chair, and then it spins up and hires AI agents with dedicated functionality to build aspects and put it all together. But here's what I'm going to tell you, Angelo, is the biggest difference in 2026, really, when it comes to all of these tools, is human taste. AI generates slop very often and doesn't look good. But that's the difference, is as a human, I could see that, say it doesn't look good and say, wow, that's terrible. Let's do it again. Right? If I just let some of these tools run overnight and do some of these things without the proper guardrails or the proper skills or the proper tooling in place, I won't know what I'm going to wake up to tomorrow. You know what I mean? That's the fear. By building the right guardrails, by building the right system, by putting together the right skills that work for you, and everyone's going to have their own. There are hundreds of millions of skills out there in the world already that people are sharing, but I can guarantee you only a few of them will actually benefit you. You need to build your own that actually work for the way you do things. By putting all of these things together in a system, and you let the model run through that system where it has all those guardrails in place and the ability to pull what it needs, wow, is that amazing. And that was what was OpenClaw's biggest unlock was, holy crap, I can do things.
Yeah.
And I just text it. But AI can already do all of that. And you don't need to have OpenClaw to do it. You can do it with the tools you already have. All of them. All of them that you currently have can do exactly what OpenClaw can do today. And you don't have to pay for another subscription. There are ways to do it. And we'll talk about that if you would like to talk about that.
Yeah, those are all things we'll do a deeper dive in the masterclass. Now, yes, for the majority of you that are putting a toe in the water, stepping in before you totally dive in, no question, the frontier models, especially Anthropic being such an inclusive suite, is absolutely the way. Depending on your capability, do you have an AI engineer on board? What outsourced services that you have? But eventually, once you get more comfortable with that and the additional cost that these APIs and token usage is going to cost you, you may start to want to say, maybe getting the right hardware, building more sovereign, having a little bit more control, less vendor lock-in, but no question, it is more complex, and you're probably opening yourself up, unless you have incredible internal people, to some more cyber risk. But those are things, including that me and my faculty may have some disagreements on, and that's okay, that at the masterclass we'll have a discussion on. Sam?
Angelo, open source models, and I apologize for cutting off. I think open source models, and I apologize, I didn't fully answer this part of the question, is open source models have truly caught up to what a lot of the frontier models have been able to do for a long time. Not to say that they're fully caught up, they're not. And the frontier models are going to continuously stay ahead. That said, the cost for some of these systems has also gotten down. The size of the systems that you need to run them on have gone down. Now, the costs have still gone up, but that's not actually because of the model's ability. It's actually just supply and demand problems at the moment, right? We don't have enough memory, physical RAM chips to put into all these systems, because the data centers for building AI are eating all that demand up. So that's really the biggest issue we're finding right now, is getting access to computers that can run them all. That said, it's getting easier. I can run fully capable, fully powerful, localized AI models right on my laptop. And I have a MacBook Air with, yes, admittedly 32 gigabytes of RAM, but even a 16 gigabyte of RAM one can run quite a bit. And it's all just on a laptop. So to say that we can't get closer to frontier intelligence locally, that's not true anymore. It's getting better and better and better. In fact, I'm going to say it. I know we haven't seen it yet, but when Siri does come out with the next version, it's going to be a significant improvement, because they're adding Gemini under the hood, right? So they're building a true LLM powered assistant that should hopefully negate the need for something like an OpenClaw, because it actually has an LLM powered system. That will be huge.
What are some open weight models that you do like?
There's another one. I will tell you though, here's the scariest thing for most family office users when it comes to open source models. The predominance of them still come out of China. It's not that there aren't American open source models, there are, but most of the big ones that you've ever heard of, like DeepSeek or GLM or ZAI, or Huawei has a couple, Alibaba,
etc.
Yeah, there's a ton of it. Quen is the biggest one, right? That's Alibaba's model. They're all out of China. It's not.
Is that a risk, Sam? If I'm downloading it from Olama or Hugging Face, and I'm not touching the cloud with it, it's coming directly into a separate computer that I keep for that?
I mean, remember, all of these things when it comes to technology is managed risk, right? And that's the one thing we really haven't covered from a privacy perspective. But the real thing, like a lot of family offices don't want to host their email, for example, or their calendar service, because it's something you have to manage. So a lot of us use Outlook or Gmail. So we're already outsourcing our services to them already, because we want stability. And we would rather pay someone to do that for us than to actually go and do it ourselves. It's a lot more to maintain. And it's the same with AI, right? It's not to say that you can't or that you shouldn't, because there are examples, great examples for why you absolutely should, but tons of other reasons why you shouldn't. Now, Jim, I see that you have a question for me. Bring it on, please, sir. And I apologize, Angela. You had another question you were going to bring up, and I will wait for Jim to write out his question in the meantime.
Yes, of course. Let's take it a little bit more practical, earlier stage. And I think you and I have spoken about this before, and you were the person that introduced me to this incredible service. What I recommend to people is in finance or a family office, why don't you write down, I know that sounds old fashioned, why don't you write down every day exactly what you do, your workflows, what your goals are, what you did today, and maybe give it a block of 3 days. Why don't you also subscribe to something? You'll get a little thing you could pop here called granola, where maybe on phone call, speakerphone, you're in a conference, in a meeting, and it effectively gives you an organized transcript. Why don't you structure a proper prompt, run everything that you took in notes that you got from granola, and say, hey, here's a day in my life. Here's a block of 3 days. Here's what my goals are. I don't think I'm as effective or efficient as I could be. How could you help me be better? One, would you broadly, I'm assuming, agree with that? But how would you make that even more effective and better?
So, firstly, you're asking a question to a problem I have absolutely been looking to solve myself. I have solved, I believe, myself, but something that I think is absolutely a critical problem, right? Is a lot of us, especially in family office life, sit in a lot of meetings, right? We hear a lot of pitches. We hear a lot of people are always pitching us something, right? And we always have to-do action items afterwards we got to complete. Nobody wants to sit there taking notes the whole time. Let's be honest. Granola, what's amazing about granola, as you mentioned, I'm a huge proponent for granola. I love it. But there are also many other ones that could do a lot of similar things. I'm not saying you have to use granola, but I actually do use granola. And so it records every call I take and then summarizes those notes, but it also keeps the transcript, and it also does try to bring out action items. That said, Angelo, one of the things we didn't get a chance to cover is what I've been building with some of these tools to help with that. And there's a lot of different tools, but one of them is my second brain, which everybody in the AI world has one of these nowadays. But I like to think mine's more advanced than many, but that's besides the point. And I could show you in the room. But the idea for me is it has absolutely all of my notes. It has all of my granola notes, and every night it runs a process where it goes and reads the notes, reads the transcripts, and sees if it needs to update the notes and add more from the transcripts, and then also extract all the tasks that I actually have to take from those meetings and builds me a task list that I have to manage. So it saves me a lot more time, because now when I take a meeting, I don't have to take any of my notes. I can have the meeting. And then when I leave that meeting, within the next 5 minutes, I have my summarized notes. I can read through those notes. And by tomorrow morning, I have absolutely everything structured, organized, ready for me to go to get acting on a lot of these tasks. So there's a lot of opportunities here. There really, really are. It comes back to the knowledge compounding systems, right, Angelo? Is like the more data I give it, the more knowledge it has to reason upon, and it compounds that knowledge to get better and better and better at answering the problems I have, because it has more data to reason upon.
Sam, we're going to take a look at Jim's question. That's one of the people in the chat bot. We'll have time for maybe one or two more audience questions. I will wrap up with asking Sam about Claude Code, what he's created, and then maybe giving a real world scenario of use by a family office before we take it to the home stretch. Broadly, for the audience that can't see, Jim is asking how Sam uses AI technologies to effectively help make better investment decisions, including in VC and AI investments. Sam, if you could help Jim and others in the audience that I think would have a very similar question.
Absolutely. So Jim, how am I doing it? There's a lot of ways that you can do it. And I can't tell you that there's one amazing or best way to do it. There's not. There's many. But one of the ways that I'm doing it is through, as I kind of mentioned a little earlier, the skills, right? So I've set up a workflow, not a dynamic workflow. I've set up my standard day-to-day workflow of when I take this action and I take this action and I take this, and I go over in the row. I do this today. So I'll give it a deal room or data room with all the materials. I'll download the materials and I'll put them in the folder. And to your point, Angelo, I am using Claude Code for this because the word code in Claude Code is a misnomer. It is absolutely not only for code. You can use Claude for any usage you want. And I'm going to show you in the masterclass why it's even more powerful than something like a cowork, for example.
Agreed.
That said, when you build a workflow, something like that, where you have skills and a step-by-step process to follow, it's actually amazing, because now I can say to Jim, your example, I give it all the due diligence documents, and it now knows how I like to invest in things, ways to diligence a deal, and how I want it to do so. So for example, I do a lot of work. My family office invests in predominantly venture tech investments. That's obviously my background, but it's what we like to invest in. We're not great real estate people. Will AI help me with real estate investing if I wanted to? Absolutely, it can. But I'm not going to use that as the example because it's not my strong suit. From a technology perspective, I can give it the entire data room and have it rip apart absolutely everything, which is what I have it do. I have it do background analysis on the manager. So it actually goes and queries the SEC Edgar database to see if there's any negative points about the manager. Yeah. It will actually go in. And by the way, all that's a connection. I gave AI another tool to access that, right? Okay, now I can go to SEC and get more data. Again, the more data it has, the better it can answer. I want to give it access to all the best data I can give it. So I gave it access to LinkedIn. Go look at the manager's profile. Is their bio what they're claiming it is? Go look at if it's a tech deal and it's a cybersecurity deal, look at the market. Look at what they're doing within the market. How do they differentiate themselves? Literally, absolutely every single claim in any deal gets hammered. Every single one. And that's not something that I could even ask an analyst to do, right? If I asked an analyst to do that, it would take them a month to get me a full report back on absolutely everything. I'm getting these back in minutes, days at the maximum to do some of these things. And I've never had it really need to go to that long. But the answer to your question, though, Jim, direct versus indirect funds also does matter. If I want to, I guess it also depends on what data you have access to, right? Do you have access to a data room to truly diligence some of these things? We're looking to use AI to assist with operational risk diligence. Yeah, absolutely. Particularly international deal real estate. Okay, so for example, I do actually have a real estate deal set up for myself that I am using. That said, I need to use it this way because I don't know enough about real estate. But one of my real estate investment analysts that I've built in there actually goes and queries the census. It goes and understands from Fed. It goes and understands regions and which areas are actually inflationary regions and which ones aren't. Every single thing gets broken down and diligenced. Okay, so you're asking here, Brett. Our typical check starts at this. I know this is an issue for me. Okay. Yeah. How do you do international direct real estate and operating company acquisitions? It's really, again, it all comes down to the right process and workflow, right? I wish I had the best answer for you. I don't know if I have the exact answer you're looking for. That said, Brett, if you have anybody in your team that is actively doing these things constantly, if they can start exactly what Angelo was saying was they can start kind of writing down how they do things, or even as they're working, start documenting, or if they're using AI, have it document the steps it was taking. The best way to really build a skill, by the way, and we're going to cover more of these things in the class, but I do want to just briefly mention it now because it is so important. The best way to build a skill is have your typical chat. And then at the end of the chat, say, were there any lessons learned or were there any other things that you think you should do differently or repeatably in the future? If so, build a skill and let it do that for you. I am not asking you to write anything. In today's day and age, AI can do all of that for you. I'm not saying that you should do nothing. You should still do a lot of things, right? But you are the decider and the change agent is the one helping you make informed decisions. That's the key differentiator.
Maybe a little quick round robin, taking it a bit to the home stretch, Sam. And I'm going to start with a bit of an uncomfortable comment question. We'll just have to throw it on the table. My audience has heard me say it before. It probably doesn't win me any friends, but that never stopped me before. Peter and Salim at the Moonshots podcast did a duo, just them, a week ago, where in larger company enterprises, 100 plus employees, they addressed this and they heard some smoke. I'm going to hear most smoke now, bringing it into the family office world. They basically implied, and it's been a little bit of, unfortunately, more underpinning than I would like, that I mentioned things like resistance, arrogance, and fear. There, in some companies, is a little bit of almost internal sabotage. Now, you have to put yourself in a non-family member in a finance firm, a philanthropic organization, or family office. I think those are fair concerns. Like, hey, I have utility, that's a skill. It's a little bit pattern recognition and systems based. I'm going to now integrate AI, and maybe the person's not going to need me after 3 to 6 months. So trust me, I'm sympathetic to that. How would you address the issue of, listen, the world is changing, family offices are changing. You are going to need to adapt your skill set without scaring them, but making them understand that putting their head in the sand, ignoring it, is not going to be a long-term answer to job security.
Right. It's not. I think there's a lot of answers to this question as well, but I think there's a lot of fear also because you've been hearing a lot of AI layoffs. And I want to first and foremost put that issue to bed first, which is these aren't really layoffs that are any way related to AI causing these jobs to be gone, because most companies haven't figured out how to fully implement AI enough to fully replace entire workforces. They just can't. And that's not the real reason. The real reason, if we're being honest, is that they've been overhiring since the pandemic, and now they need to right-size their ships. Now, I'm not going to say anything that a lot of family offices don't already know by saying that. That said, the one thing I really, really want to remember and harp on, and I think you're going to see this more as you take the masterclass, would be if everyone gets, let's say even they get 2x. Let's say they get 10x. That would be amazing. But if I had a whole company of people who were 10x, wouldn't that be better for me? Right? Like, why would I want to let go of people when I'd rather have more people doing 10 times their ability before to make me succeed? So I think the big fear is really around messaging. Because if you look at, for example, in China, OpenClaw is one of the largest things. The government was enticing people to do it, right? There's no hesitation against AI in China. That's why there are a lot more companies and people are willing to do anything. But in America, we're very private, we're very safe, and we are very cautious, and we are very hesitant. And there's nothing wrong with that. We approach everything from a risk mitigation point of view. And family offices, that is our bread and butter, right? How do we mitigate risk? Well, we find other ways, right? And we invest in multiple things. That's the reason why you don't invest in one AI tool. You'll invest in multiple because you're going to need them in power and combination, right? I think there's still a lot of room to grow and there's a lot of uncertainty, but the more we can teach people how to use these tools, the better. And I think, Angelo, to your point really about, like, for example, Uber or Amazon who've said, or Microsoft even, that have cut some of their token maxing efforts, the idea of, like, how do we get every one of our employees to, like, maximize their token usage? I mean, like, constantly keep using these tools just incessantly just to build. Well, the real reason why they're curbing some of that was actually for multiple reasons, but the predominance of it was, number one, they didn't have a good set of training in the first place. So a lot of people were just building things that had no value, or at least no value for the company. They may have had value for the employee, but not overall in a larger scheme. Number one. Number two, because they were letting everyone build anything, there was no way to actually kind of get it to all work together at the end of the day either. They weren't enticing them to work as a team to build a product. They were enticing them to all build with them by themselves and build products, which is not how any corporation has worked in development for years, right? It's always been teams of people building things together. So I think as these development practices also continuously grow and change and adapt, because we have had to do that, as we've had to do with all major tech cycles, we've had to readapt and relearn. We're doing the same thing now, and we're still right in the middle of it. So for all those companies that say, oh, we're letting go of people because of AI, that's not true. They're letting go of AI for other reasons, or they're letting go of people for other reasons. It is actually more of a reason why you should learn how to use these tools, because it will also be the differentiator for you as well. A lot of these people don't have the training they need to actively take advantage of these tools in their full capacities. Those of us who have that knowledge will be better off.
Yeah, there was, like, when I noted there's a couple of weeks to go to the masterclass, jump on board, access to me, the 2 private bucks. You're going to meet Sam in person, other incredible instructors, immersive, your peers. I got people coming in from Germany, all around the world. And literally by July 4th, a big US holiday, oh, but Angelo, you said I could be 70 years old starting from zero and be top 1%. If you have some level of intelligence and you put in the work, the benchmark in the family office world, yeah, it's that low. The majority of them, and I travel the world, on a scale of 1 to 10, the majority are a 1 or 2. I'm maybe being a little kind, maybe like a 0.5 to 1. So for you to get to that level in really technically about under 30 days, oh, it is absolutely possible. Really quick, Sam, not easy for me, I'm sorry. But I know we're going to get family offices thinking two things that are holding them back. Let's jump right into it. And you hinted at this one a little bit. Angelo, like, I don't know. I'm concerned about cyber with this AI. How would you address that?
Yeah, again, it definitely comes back to managed risk, right? We've been doing this in the tech world forever, right? We constantly build tools. Obviously, not to say that this tool isn't radically different and radically transformative. It absolutely is. And it's causing us to rethink how we've done all of these things for a long time, because it's changing how quickly some of these things can get done. Now, for those of you who use AI actively, even if you've tried to do any development work or anything in there, you'll notice that it actually tells you how long something's going to take, but then it's wildly wrong. Well, why is that? Because it's actually the training data is trained on human hours to complete a task. So when it says, oh, it's going to take me 5 hours to complete this, and then it finishes it in 20, well, yeah, because it would have taken a human 5 days or 5 hours to do that task. But now because of AI, it can be done in 20 minutes. So all of our thought process, all of how these things are working have shifted all of our mindsets. Now, the key question you're asking, though, Angelo, is privacy, and how do I make sure that like what I'm doing is private? And there are a couple of things that we can discuss on that front. You mentioned like locally hosted models is absolutely one of the key ways you can be safe and secure in these tools, using these tools and systems, because you own it. It's running on your machine. That said, it's not nearly as powerful as the frontier models are. The frontier models all are SOC 2 compliant, HIPAA compliant. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're not training on your data unless you explicitly pay and turn that off, and you should. And there are still restrictions that they can hold their data for 30 days, right? Mm-hmm. And even OpenAI has been proven that a warrant can be good enough to get your chat history and use that, for example.
Exactly.
That said, though, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of us are using Gmail or Outlook. We might use Dropbox. We might use Google Drive. We might use all sorts of cloud-hosted services. Even the big firms do too. So here's ultimately my argument is Apple is a 1 trillion plus valued company. NVIDIA is a almost 4 trillion plus valued company. Some of these are very, very valued companies, and all of them are using AI, no problem. So how are we doing anything any differently than they are is one question. But number two, how do we catch up is the other question, right? Like, we know we can't sit on the sidelines and do nothing. We will absolutely be caught behind. But if you keep learning these things, if you take this class now, or if you learn and you're doing these other sessions now, that knowledge, again, we're going to keep saying the word compounding. It's true. The knowledge compounds, and you use it, and you take that next bit of knowledge, and hey, now dynamic workflows came out. How does that work within my existing setup? How does that work for my tool set? Got it. I know how it works. Great. Now I know how to apply it. That's what we're trying to teach.
And I think the last question, then we'll do a close. Maybe give the audience an example, whether it's Codex or Claude Code, what we used to call vibe coding, which, as you know, in the last masterclass in November, as a then 59-year-old, I explained with no engineering help in October, it was a little hard. I didn't have Claude Code. I had to work, and then I had to get it on the App Store. That was harder. I figured it out. I spent way too many hours. It was very frustrating. But explain, and you walked us through, I think it was the 5th of November, like, I'm going to open my computer and I'm going to create a app right here in like 15 minutes for you. Imagine what we're going to do in June. So talk a little bit about the ease of creating an app. It's incredible. And maybe an app that you're actually literally using that you created in the family office today.
Sure. So, we built a CRM live in the room, right? That was a lot of fun. I think what we've now realized, especially given how easy it is to create these things and how disposable you can almost say that code has become, right? I can very much say after the end of one generation, I can say, you know what? I hate every single thing you just built. Do it again and throw everything out. Am I hurting the environment by doing that? Yes. And we're not going to go into a different conversation on that. But the answer is still, it is disposable. And sometimes that is the better answer, right? Is rather than trying to reiterate and trying to get it to that point, maybe it's easier to just scrap it and start over. You can do that with AI where you would never have done that before, right? You would never say in the middle of a work project, you know what? Let's start it all over again. This didn't work. Let's start it again. You would never have done that. But with AI, you probably should sometimes do that, right? Because sometimes it's going down a rabbit hole that it should not be going down, and you need to start it over and get it right. But for us, it's a timing aspect, right? I don't care if it takes 20 minutes or 2 hours. If I'm not focusing on it and it's still getting done, I don't care. So as long as it's happening in the background, that's my goal. I think there's so much more that we did obviously not have the time to cover for in an hour. And that's obviously why we have 2 full days of masterclass to cover absolutely every single thing. But I would love to demo in the room when you guys are there. I'll show you some fun things that I've been building, but I'll come back to my second brain a little bit here. And I know this is an example that everybody will see online, but it is very, very useful for knowledge work, especially, which is what we're doing, right? I'm taking a lot of meetings. I'm trying to understand companies that I'm looking at and investing in. I'm trying to do my emails all day. I'm trying to manage everything all at once. Why am I not leveraging the tools that can help me do that better? Make me more efficient. So my second brain, which may now be smarter than my first one, I don't know, is really all about how do we take all of the knowledge I have and compound it together so that when I ask, my example is Claude Code, when I ask Claude Code about something I'm working on, it has all the data it needs to answer that question immediately or give me a better answer. So for example, for the meeting that I have today here with Angelo, where we're talking about what a real family office is running AI on, all I had to ask was, what was the last time I had a meeting with Angelo and what should we be discussing? And it literally pulled everything up for me. At first, it scanned my calendar and it found the event. It found Angelo in my list of detailed people that I have all these notes on. It has all of his LinkedIn history. Sorry, Angelo. It has all of the details on you.
Very boring.
So you should have seen what it said. No, it actually came back with a really good response. And it was really useful as I was preparing myself for the kind of questions you were going to ultimately be asking me today. So what I'm trying to go for is I want a system that helps me answer questions and help me do my job better and more effectively. And so that's what I'm trying to build. I'm trying to build systems and tools for myself that make me more effective and more efficient. And then I'm building a lot of other tools for our family office. How do we all get more efficient and better at doing these things? How do we diligence these tools better? How do we understand our manager? Like, how do I know capital calls are coming? How do I know, which is the most impossible thing to predict because you can't. But how do I, for example, how do I get a look through on all of my funds? I've been doing that. I've been building that out where because of all of the meetings that I have with all of my managers, they tell me. But am I writing them all down? No, most of the time I'm not. But it has all that data captured. And so it's starting to write those down. And so to answer your question of like, what's a tool I really like, this is my best thing because when I wake up in the morning, I have a briefing ready to go with here's what's your agenda for today. Here's what you need to prepare for. Here's what you promised you were going to do for other people yesterday. And you need to get actions on those. And here's some news. I also have give me news updates. So it goes and pulls from like the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal. It goes and pulls from like news blogs I look at, AI blogs I look at, the Financial Times. It looks at everything, gives me a summary of what I need to know. And then it also gives me all sorts of amazing other knowledge if I need it, based on all the knowledge it's compounding upon. Every single meeting, every note, every single time I've ever been in a meeting with any single person that's logged, every single person I meet is logged and automatically enriched. Automatically, they go and get Googled, they get LinkedIn searched, and they get populated. So now whenever I ask, hey, what did I talk with Angelo about? It says, oh, Angelo, you spoke with these 3 things, and he has a background in this, so you may want to bring up that. That's where you start to see things in compounding. And so I'm looking forward to showing some people how to build some of these things on their own because it may sound difficult, and I promise you it really is not.
I completely agree. And I tell the audience, if I could do it, you could do it. And I really stand by that. I'm 100% sure that no matter what field you're in, This is going to make you do more with less. That's the scary part for some. Better and faster. Yeah. So numbers 1, 3, and 4, do more, better, and faster, are the ones you want to focus on. And that's going to be very valuable to you. In my conclusion, it was great to have Sam on. I don't believe I've had one of my faculty instructors of a masterclass on, and Sam is like the best of the best. We could go on for hours. Sam's like, oh, Angelo, I don't know if we could really do more than an hour. We're probably close to an hour and a half. And we had to leave some things on the cutting room floor. Now, I know many of you are saying, I know many of you are saying, Angelo, like, is this? No, it's not all I talk about, but one, we're right around the corner from the masterclass, so it's getting extra attention. And I love many other subjects. Sam knows, my God, don't get Angelo started on geopolitics. I love macroeconomics. I love investing. By the way, AI ties into all of that. And sorry, DL1, your questions were not on topic for the AI today, but if you email me or reach out to me, I'll give you at least, even as a non-member, I'll give you a little bit of context. I'll be nice for 5 or 10 minutes and try to help guide you if your questions were somewhat serious. So when it comes to family office dynamics and structure, global issues, investing, taxes, geopolitics, macro, I love it all. These are all subjects that my members get proprietary content on, hear some of the world's greatest speakers, and interact with families. So yes, I am globally the family office person that's by far talking and living through the AI story the most, because I do believe I see something here that many of you do believe I'm directionally correct. I get it. Many of you just think I'm too early. I'm not. And you're going to get the mindset and the compounding of the advantage that others may not be able to catch up on if you just run with this. So yes, I am screaming it from a mountaintop. And in 2 years, you're going to look back and say, oh, the guy with the beard was 100% correct. And I just want you, and Sam, you got a beard too. So that could mean both of us. So again, I'm going to say, the way that you could go from 0 to 100, from 100 to 212, and maybe become like, I don't know, like a Lewis Hamilton at this, you don't have to wait years to do this. So I'm not saying I'm the only source out there. I'm sure there's others more broad than me, but not as focused on AI integrating in the family office world. So if you're in the family office community and broadly in finance or service the community, yes, honestly, I believe joining at angelorobles.com, becoming a member, being part of a community that's global, getting proprietary content, multiple books, let alone my 2 AI-focused books, direct access to me, and leading into the masterclass, like now is the time. I'll reserve you that seat. By the way, this will be the largest, I don't know if that's necessarily good, the largest by number of people masterclass that we've hosted. The gentleman from Germany is coming in with his 2 sons. We have someone else now coming in from Mexico and all around the US. Just the people in that room that will become your peers that you'll interact with. We have a gentleman that sold a company in Greater Pennsylvania, very successful and newer to all this in the family office world, that is dying to meet Sam. Sam's like a rock star. Like, I would want to meet him too if I didn't know him. Like, this is all available to you within under 3 weeks. Now, yes, you have to join. You have to be a member. So go to angelorobles.com, look about the AI Masterclass, go to membership, and just jump on in. I'll help onboard you. You'll get all the proprietary content. You'll be with us for the full year. I'm going to do other masterclasses. Sam will know because he was part of 2 of the 3 last year. Probably about a third of my participants basically attended all 3. Don't you learn more from watching your favorite movie or series a second and third time? Oh, and by the way, AI is changing so quick that even a 2-month gap in a masterclass, maybe 20% of the content may completely need to be revamped. So the opportunity is less so me. It's incredible people like Sam and others. It's your peers. And I'm not kidding when I say starting now, jumping into that masterclass. By July 4th, you're going to be so far ahead of other people if you just put in the work, if your skills compound. Imagine where you're going to be at the end of the summer. And later this summer, I'm going to host another. And then fall, I believe we actually have the dates. I think it's November 4th and 5th. Similar dates to what I did last year. And then probably first quarter, we'll do Florida. So within a 12-month period, we'll probably make it 4 of these. And finally, move one out of New York. All you have to do to meet faculty and real family offices like Sam and other peers that are going to be in the room and interact is to jump on board. I get it. It's not an inconsequential number, but what's the value that it's going to provide to you in industries where the benchmark is very low? And I want you to be incredible. Now is the time. So you know how to reach out to me. Actually, the gentleman who joined from the Mid-Atlantic who sold the company, he just texted me. So my number, by the way, is 203-570-2898. It's not a second phone. It's my actual phone. People, I don't know, they don't like to call or text me. Am I that much of a curmudgeon? So feel free to do so. DM me on social medias. Email is angelo@angelorobles.com. And the website, it's pretty simple. And joining is very easy, angelorobles.com. I want you into the masterclass as a member. That's your ticket. That's your in. And if I got to get a little bigger room to host maybe 18 or 20, I guess we'll make that happen. That's a good problem. And you're going to meet incredible people. I promise you that. They're already committed from literally around the world. Sam, it's great to have you and your family as a relationship. I greatly appreciate it. You're a wonderful person, a great investor, have an incredible background that we really didn't, unfortunately, have time to get into. So you'll be the mystery man a little bit from that perspective. And Sam, literally, like, I'm not so sure that he's not the best hands-on instructor on AI for family offices in the world. And I'm so fortunate to, one, we're relatively local to each other, and have him be a participant in terms of what I'm doing. Sam, I'll leave you a final comment. And for those that would like to maybe engage you on LinkedIn or reach out to you, maybe collaborative on family office issues, or maybe want to hire you one-on-one as a consultant, how could they learn more?
Sure. So I'm not going to put out my email or my phone number. I'm sorry, Angela. I'm not going to do that like you just did. But I will, first of all, if you join the masterclass, you will absolutely have my contact information so that you will be able to reach me should you need it. The other thing I will also be I'm producing content for this as well, that you will have access to. You'll get to keep after the class. It is a guide that I actively maintain on a it's actually multiple times a week schedule to keep it fully current. So you will get access and resources from me and to me once you take the class. I'm really looking forward to meeting all of you guys and to showing you how some of these tools really work well together and how to get you guys started on using all these tools as well. Looking forward to having as many of you who are able to join us as you can. Don't forget to join the membership so that you can actually attend the class this year. And I look forward to meeting you all soon.
Sam, you've been great. I appreciate your time. Look forward to seeing you, obviously, in under 3 weeks. I'll have to take out my New York seersucker suit. It'll be hot and humid, I'm sure, that time in New York. If you remember last year, the first one, we had like 2, I'm not making this up, 2 back-to-back the days of the masterclass, 99 and humid. New York could be like that sometimes. But everyone, again, thank you all for your time today. Sam, you've been great. Appreciate you, and I'll see you soon. Everyone, thank you. Appreciate all the questions. Everyone, have a great day. Thank you, Sam.
Thanks, everybody.